Hi, everyone. Today we're talking about leadership. It's not something that we learn in our actuarial degrees. It's something that most of us learn on the job. But for actuaries to really make a difference in the world, we need to be able to lead others and also lead ourselves. So, what does good leadership look like? And how can we be our own leaders? Joining us today is Shivani Juneja, an experienced actuary who's currently completing the Guardian Actuarial Senior Leadership Program. Shivani, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Julia. I'm very excited to be here.
So, Shivani, you're now based in Australia, but you were born and raised in India, where you started your actuarial studies. But then life happened and you moved to Australia, and now you've worked across most of the actuarial functions in life insurance. So, I'm looking forward to hearing more about your career and what you've learned about leadership throughout that career in this interview. But
Yeah,
first, let me ask you this. Shivani, how do you use your actuarial superpowers to make a difference?
great question, Julia. I would say the way I use my actuarial powers is really by making informed decisions, keeping strong and relevant communication, and managing my stakeholders well. I think that's the short message that I have, regarding my actuarial powers. But I think I probably might just touch a little bit around my current role.
Sure.
I'm working in a space which is a very project-based environment. We're looking at a lot of innovation. There's a lot of work around, thinking around optimization, and there's a lot of scope for like diversity, openness, change, experience. And I think that's where I really feel like my actual powers come in quite tangible. But having said that, I think there's in whatever you do, you use your actual powers, whether I think it's the talking that you have to do to yourself, where you tell yourself that what you're doing is going to make a difference, whether it's you're designing a product, how's that feature going to impact the customers, whether this product is going to be sustainable. So there's that element that I think you are making a big difference in whatever way using your actual skills.
Mm. I think that's such a good point, Shivani. So that's what your idea of sort of self-leadership, that's sort of how you're talking to
Yeah.
yourself about what you're doing.
Yeah, I really like talking to myself like that because
Uh-huh.
that makes me feel good about what I do.
Ah,
Also, I think it gives that positive sense, really,
hmm.
in makes me wake up every day. Okay, today what I'm going to do is really going to make a difference. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's so interesting because I think that the way we talk to ourselves is really important and I think
yeah,
can't be underestimated.
yeah.
And I think as actuaries, it sometimes can feel difficult to make the connection between what we do and how we are making a difference.
Yeah, I think
Um,
you're right, Julia, because like I'm no different. I've been through that cycle where you do valuations at the start of your career, you move into pricing, or you do other areas. And I think I kind of felt at some stage I wasn't growing enough, but I think it was a lot to do with how I was talking to myself, not looking into the detail. I kind of just felt like I was running a process. And I
mhm,
kind of didn't really enjoy that. But the
mhm,
moment I kind of got into this transition where I was talking more broadly, oh, how is my work actually impacting? Who can I really talk to? Where is it actually going to go?
mhm,
I think I kind of just widened my own learning space. And that made me feel, better about what I was doing, made it more tangible, I could see the end to end. Like, this is what I'm doing. This is where it's going. This is where it's going to be put in the report. This is the number that everybody's reading. So, a bit of that.
Yep. Yep. Very interesting. Very interesting. And I think that understanding the bigger picture is so valuable for us to understand our impact. And when we have great leaders, they often do that for us, but not everyone has that all of the time. So if you can do that yourself, that's a
Yes.
really powerful skill to have.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
I think you learn it on the go, like you learn
Yeah.
it on the job.
Yeah.
You don't have to have it from day one. It's something you learn slowly, but hopefully you want to do that because that makes your work more meaningful.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, you talk about day one, your career has evolved quite a bit. And in fact, your life has evolved quite a bit because you moved from India to Australia due to
Yeah.
some life changes and had to start over. So, what did that experience of moving to Australia teach you about leadership, Shivani?
A lot, I would say, Julia. So big changes in my life. I came here when I got married. So what that meant was I kind of left my life back in India and
Mm.
obviously came to a new country, didn't really know anyone. I think the really hard part was I didn't really have anything to grab onto. So I wasn't going to a university, or I, really didn't have any family here.
Mm.
And so I really didn't know where to start. And that, I have to say, initially was a little intimidating. But it was a good start in some ways because I could start fresh. And I think the challenge I had at the time when I came was that the GFC had just hit. So
Ah, yes.
the really, my idea to come here and explore what I can do or which field I could get into, although I had left my actual career back in India, I guess I didn't really come with the intention that I might be able to pursue that.
Right.
Um, I just had to go with the flow.
Mhm.
But then that made it really hard too.
Mm.
But I think that was the time where I kind of really introspected. What is it that I can do? My first challenge was that I had to bring in some money for whatever I had to do. So that was the first time I really had to like struggle it out because
Mm.
until now I was living in a very protected world.
Uh-huh.
And that's where I kind of like got into a job being a storekeeper. I also joined, the Red Cross Society, and I started like volunteering for kids that came from non-English speaking backgrounds,
Right.
helping them with their homework. And then down the lane, I had another kind of job, which I'll speak about in a moment. But
Yeah.
those were my experiences. And I think just talking about what sort of leadership skills, I was kind of picking up on the go. One was really just around that attitude of resilience. Like I was pretty strong in the sense that I don't have to feel upset about these changes or, um, there is something to look forward to. I don't know. I just have that sense that, I just have to keep going. I should be able to do something small or I should be able to do something big. So that I think that resilience, I think, was the big thing that was coming out of it when I look at it in hindsight.
Mm.
But yeah, I started small like that. I got some money in. That's when it triggered, that I can maybe go back to studying. But the money was still small. It wasn't
Mhm.
enough to
Mhm.
really start pursuing exams. Um, it was later that I kind of joined a lawyer who used to work in the space of working with councils, this was back in Melbourne, handling their cases against the council. And that was a very interesting space. So it was some ways connected with claims. And then that kind of really sparked my sort of interest to start looking for actuarial roles again.
Right.
It was only after about 2 years being in Australia that I finally landed with my first actuarial role.
Mm.
But what I did do during this time was I kind of did a lot of interviews. I spent a lot of time looking for recruiters. I obviously didn't make the right starts. Obviously, I didn't know the market, etc. But slowly, as I kind of got into the process, I found the right kind of recruiters who were specialists in the actuarial field. And so on. From there, it went on. We kept in touch. I failed miserably in a lot of interviews, but that was all learning, I
A
guess.
learning experience.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I think also I would say what I really found interesting through this process was learning about people. And I met some incredible people during this journey. I think they made my journey much more memorable and, in a way, very positive.
Mm.
Um,
Can you
so I
tell me
remember,
about one of them or some
yeah,
of them?
yeah. I remember I had a recruiter, a lady, who was very generous with her time. Um, she was trying to prepare me for another role, really just an admin sort of role.
Mm.
But, she helped me do my resume. She helped me just, bring me a little up to date how to present myself.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, I didn't really have the right clothes and all of those things. But also she said to me, I'll try and help you as much as I can to get, you a more appropriate role, say, to your skill set.
Right.
I just don't have it now. And I was like, okay, maybe she's just saying it just because she wants to say that, and she's being nice. But Julia, that lady came to me after 9 months of not being in touch at all. And she said, look, I have this role, which was with the lawyer
Right.
that I was talking about. And she said, would you be interested? And I said, I would definitely be interested. And like it was just that she did the role, she prepared me for the role, I got the role, and then she said, all I ask you is a cup of tea with me, and that's
Oh,
it. And I don't know, maybe she was probably dealing with a lot of immigrants, or she was herself an immigrant, I don't know, but that was kind of has stayed with me for such a long time, and it will continue to stay in terms of
mm,
just helping people. She had nothing really to sort of, go with it or push for it.
yeah,
She just kept me in her books, and that was amazing.
yeah.
Yeah.
She just kept her word and showed you some kindness and humanity to help you on your journey.
Yeah, yeah. For that matter, even the lawyer I worked with, um, he always knew that, I'm not from the field, but he was very generous in explaining things to me. All I used to do for him was write dictations, and I used to make so
Uh-huh.
many mistakes. But he was very polite with me, and but I remember I had just worked with him for about 4 months, and I said to him, I've had a chance at an interview, and I've got through, and I was really just a casual, and he got me a bouquet of flowers, and he said, I really mean well for you. I'm sure you're going to do really well for yourself, and um, yeah, and that was it. But he didn't really have to
Wow.
do that. So really lovely people that I came across.
Yeah, yeah. And so what a journey that was for you then, Shivani. You've come from India to Australia, you got married, you had to find work, you did some volunteering, you weren't working in actuarial to start with, but by putting one foot in front of the other and to just continue to believe that things would work out, you
Yeah,
you got that first actuarial job and
yeah,
and learnt some lessons along the way as well.
yeah, yeah. Some really important lessons. I think the big lesson I've already said is around people, but I kind of just always take that as this is how I need to be with people. Like,
Mm.
I have to look after my people. There's goodness in people, and I think I believe in that quite strongly.
Yes, yes. Okay, so then you got your first actuarial role, and since then you've actually had quite a lot of different roles. You've probably worked across most of the major actuarial functions in a life insurer, and
Yeah.
no doubt worked for a lot of different actuarial leaders as well. So, Shivani, what's that diversity of experience taught you about leadership?
Yeah, some great things, Julia. I think as you transition through roles, I think one thing that I was very conscious about, and I want to put it up front, is the idea around transferable skills.
Mm-hmm.
When I started, obviously, I wasn't that conscious about it. So I started in traditional roles. I started with systems, I did valuations, and I did that for quite some time. I did that for about 3.5 years.
Uh-huh.
And as I mentioned earlier, like that kind of made me feel a little stagnant.
Mm.
In some ways, I was sort of in this, thinking that I'm just running a process. What value am I adding? That sort of phase. But I think the moment I I was really good at observing people, and I used to observe our leaders, and I used to say, what is it that they have really that I don't have at this point?
Mm. Mm.
That's when I kind of learned this lesson around transferable skills. They were very good with their communication. They were
Uh-huh.
very, you know, good with stakeholder management. I would say, just generally, like in terms of how they would talk about themselves, the work that they were doing. And I think these were
Mm.
the skills, when say you're doing valuations, you're kind of like sitting in your own quiet corner, maybe
Yes.
don't really express yourself as much. And I said, okay, I need to do a bit more of that. And I have to say, I'm generally a bit reserved, but I think that was my, time to sort of get out of my comfort zone.
Mm.
And so I really thought about it hard, and I kind of put those roles in more traditional roles where you kind of do your own thing, you're quiet.
Mm.
And
Mm.
then I said, okay, no, I think I have to really stretch myself out of this zone. That's when I got an opportunity in pricing.
Uh-huh.
And I think I really enjoyed that role. There was innovation, there was talking a lot to people. It did take me a lot of time to get into my comfort zone in those areas, but I really got that bug. I don't know if you can say it, that I need to expand,
Mm,
and I need to speak to more people. I need to understand what the other different areas are doing. How do they interact? So it really excited me in a lot of ways.
mm,
So I think pricing kind of gave me that, sort of interest. And then I moved on to a role which I thought was really exciting, which touched in areas around risk, where my role was really more around supporting an appointed actuary. But I did a lot of work doing sort of reviews for him and then sort of presenting my understanding of what's happening from a risk perspective, from lots of different perspectives, actually. How is it impacting the company, all the areas that an appointed actuary would sort of consider, from a reputation point of view, but also like from customer impact sort of view, sustainability point of view. And during this time, I, you know, there were a lot of interesting things. There were new products that were launched. There were a lot of tender work that I did. There was the IDII review that happened around that time, which meant that a lot of companies were also looking at new product designs. So that was a really interesting space. I wasn't really doing a lot of technical work, but I had that craft to sort of understand what happens in the background, but then to
mm,
be able to like sort of analyze what another person's done, whether it's
mm,
making sense, not making sense, I think was another skill set altogether. And I
mm,
really enjoyed doing that. I think in this role, I also learned that communication was key. You really had to manage your stakeholders well, especially around, I guess like maybe like, translate your technical work into something meaningful but simple that your audiences can understand. Your stakeholders were the likes of the appointed actuaries and the GMs where you're messaging. So your messaging had to be very carefully set up, and yet had to be simple. So where I'm heading with this is that you're doing a lot of technical work, but how do you make it simple, concrete, time valued, to your audiences? And I think those were great, skills that I learned with that role. Even writing emails in a way that are simple yet meaningful, direct. Um, yeah. And so that's the skill I kind of then carried on with this current role that I'm in. And I think that's coming out to be really handy where I'm in a project space. I'm managing, people spread out across different teams to make sure that my work's happening. Um, it's the area I'm in, I wouldn't take the credit for like generating the ideas that happen in that project space, but then I really have the responsibility where I'm taking someone's idea and narrating it to other teams. And so I
mm,
think that brings another sense of responsibility, but at the same time, your communication has to be great.
mm.
So
The
um,
communication is so important, isn't it? And it's so interesting those lessons that you've had from working, from observing those different effective leaders and realizing that it's not because they're amazing technical actuaries. That's not why they've gotten into those more senior roles. And it would have been quite easy for you probably to stay in that valuation role, stay in your comfort zone. You talked about felt a little bit uncomfortable stepping out of that and doing some
yeah,
different things and using different skills and talking to wider people. But actually, by having the courage to do that, that's opened up a whole lot of new opportunities for your career. And I think that's a really powerful learning and reflection for people to apply.
yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
Mm. Wow. So you realized that some of the things they had in common were strong communication skills, the ability to work with different stakeholders, the ability to communicate complex concepts simply, And, as actuaries, I think most of us struggle with that because we kind of want to show all of the detail of all the clever work that we've done. And it can be tempting to want to really just share way too much detail and too much information that is not always useful for our audience. So knowing how to distill that down and communicate that simply, that's, great skills of great actuaries. So yeah, okay. So you learnt a lot by looking at those different effective leaders that you're working for, and you have worked for many leaders across your career. So in your view, Shivani, what do you think characterizes an excellent people leader?
Yeah, it's a tricky question, Julia. And I have to say, I don't look at it as a question where one person has to have all the attributes to make a good people leader.
Mm.
I think the way I approach it is, and I'm not sure if this is the right way or the wrong way, but this is how I like to look at different people. I have several leaders, and my leaders are in different spaces, so to say. So I really value a leader who's got some significant people leadership skills,
Mm-hmm.
and I observe him to learn more about those people leadership skills. But then I have another leader who's really great at communication, but maybe not so great with people. Let's
Okay.
um, and I value him for that, like how simply he can really just communicate very complex ideas to his audience who are
Mm.
not actual in really
Mm.
simple terms. And that's a great skill to have too.
It is.
Um, I also feel like just going back, I mean, ideally, to a good people leader should be really someone who listens to you and is able to help you
Mm.
get to where you want to. Like if
Mm.
I choose that person to be my leader, always who's able to sort of have that holistic view of ideas, but able to communicate those views to you well so that they're understood well, and you can walk on that journey with them.
Mm.
But I do find it's challenging to find that one role model in everyone. And so my mantra really has been, I have different leaders for different aspects that I want to work on.
Right.
And I just tend to choose them consciously. Another aspect that I, obviously really value is women in leadership. And that's something I see that as quite important. There's been so much, conversations in the media and so much in news around this gender gap, inequality aspects and how, there's differences in women. And I think it's fair to say that that difference exists quite a bit in the corporate world. And I think if you can find a leader, and me being a woman, who can really support you in that journey, it doesn't have to be like one-on-one interaction, even by observing. And if you really feel confident, approach the leader. But that's great then. And I think with some of the women leaders I've seen, I think really it's their go-get attitude, their resilience. These are the aspects that I find most fascinating about most of the women leaders I see as leaders.
Mm. Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, certainly a unique challenge that we face as women in the actuarial profession, particularly in what's still really a male-dominated profession as well. So, but of course, as we climb the ranks and move into more senior roles, there are different role models across different professions who are running our organizations. And it sounds like even though there's no one leader that has all of those great traits. I
Yeah,
mean, it's that's to be expected, I think, as humans. But
yeah, yeah,
if we can pick out and observe from different leaders different qualities and different traits that they exhibit,
yeah,
and learn from that, then there's a lot
yeah.
of power and value in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I guess it's not gender biased. Like very honestly, I'm so lucky to have a manager who's a great people leader. And he's been frank enough to have conversations with me. I was trying to like to give you an example, I was trying to express an idea to him and I was very nervous around that. And
Mm.
he quite supported me in a really pleasant way. And I was quite surprised. He said, I like he acknowledged that women have more of this imposter syndrome. But then he
Mm.
tried to give me examples where he himself kind of faces
Really?
imposter syndrome.
Mm.
And, that was a really good pep up talk for me. And yeah, I kind of like, fell for that and really felt good about myself in the end. But yeah, so
Sounds like me, you've also worked for some really amazing male senior leaders as
yeah,
well. And I think that makes a huge difference
yeah,
as a woman trying to carve out a career. If you've got good support from all genders,
yeah,
that really makes a difference. So
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Amazing. Okay, so Shivani, you've told us about your um, challenging start to your actuarial career and your move from India to Australia and how you put things in place to be able to get back into your actuarial career and complete your fellowship. You've talked about what you've learned from looking at different leaders in different roles, in all those different actuarial functions that you've worked in, and the courage that you took to be able to try some new things, not just technical skills, but stakeholder engagement and communication and, speaking up to people outside your team. That's really helped pave the way for quite an interesting and successful career path for you, that's taken you out of just that sort of traditional actuarial role and created the opportunities that you were looking for. And you've also talked about how things like communication and different aspects of good leadership have also made a difference for you in supporting your career and your career path as well. So I have one question left for you, Shivani, and it's this. What's one tip that you would have for actuaries wanting to build their leadership capability?
Yeah. I think it's a no-brainer for me, Julia. I think I would say just push yourselves outside of the actual world, interact more with stakeholders outside of the actual teams. Not only do you learn more about them, but you do get a chance to exhibit your skills to a wider audience, and it allows you to stay connected with the other arms of the business and allows you to work collaboratively. Um, I have, I do realize this timing is such that we are soon going to have Mother's Day.
Yes, we've just gone Mother's Day.
And and I have to support my sisterhood. So I have a message for my lovely women in the field as well.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that, you're responsible for yourself. And I think it's really important that you invest in yourselves and create your own support system if you're struggling at work. It's fair to say, Julia, I found you, but you've been a great coach. But also, if you are struggling, find that support. But you are responsible for looking for a path to improve, to make that improvement for yourself. Um, and go out there, build a little brand value. It's important. It's important for your career. Talk to more female leaders. And yeah, focus on yourselves. This might be a bit of a slow journey, but you maintain the pace, but you look after yourselves first.
Wonderful messages there and such great advice, Shivani. Thank you so much
Sure.
for your time today. It's been wonderful hearing about your story, your lessons, and your reflections on leadership. Thanks, Shivani.
Thanks, Julia. Thanks for having me.